Again, shalom, my friends. Before I said a few words about the situation in the world, the corona sickness, epidemic, pandemic, and now we have to say a few words about the Parashat of this Shabbat. This coming Shabbat, we will read a double parasha, two parashiot. One known as Vayakhel, the second one is Pekudei. Vayakhel, it begins with the words Vayakhel Moshe et kol adat bnei Israel. Vayomer alehem, sheshet yamim te'aseh melacha, uvayom hashebi'i Shabbat kodesh, yeh lachem, kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu, lo teva'aru esh bechol moshevotechem beyom hashabbat. Translation: And Moshe gathered the congregation of Israel. When was that? Rashi explains that this was the day after Kippur, when Moshe came down from the mountain of Sinai again, because before he went on the 17th of Tammuz, he went up to the mountain of Sinai to pray to God and to beg Him to pardon the Jewish people for the terrible sin of the golden calf. And Moshe, as you know, as we read in the last parasha, Parashat Kitisa, he begged the Almighty God, he even put his life on the line, and his name, he even said to God, erase my name from your book if you decide to destroy the people of Israel. Finally, God said, Salahti kidvarecha, as you say, I am pardoning, I am forgiving the Jewish people. And then he came down. That was the day after Yom Kippur, and that's what Rashi explains. So the first thing that Moshe did at that time after he got the pardon of Israel is to gather the people of Israel. Now, gathering the people of Israel means unity. He united the Jewish people. And that gives us a certain thought that we have to say. You know that this parasha, Vayakhel and Pekudei, they always arrive, we read them before the month of Nisan, before the beginning of the month of Nisan. And our sages said that B'Nisan nig'alu b'Nisan atidin leigael. The redemption of the Jewish people will be in the month of Nisan, as it happened in the first redemption from Egypt, that was in the month of Nisan, the redemption of the Jewish people. Thus will be also the last redemption, which we hope will be in our days, hopefully. So that's why we read Vayakhel and Pekudei in that time, but we have to add a few more. Our sages said in the Midrash, En Israel nig'alim ela kshena'asim aguda achat. When you could expect the Jewish people to be redeemed completely, that the Messiah will come, only after the Jewish people is united. Unity in the eyes of God is very precious. God is very much sad when he sees the dissension among the Jewish people. In the last weeks, unfortunately, we have seen that there is so much dissension among the Jewish people, between all kinds of parties, political parties, so much Lashon Hara. I think the reason why Corona is happening now is because God, it's like if God saying enough is enough. He has to interfere. Of course, the main reason we believe that it's because Shabbat was going to be desecrated again and again, and Shabbat is the day of God, and God cannot tolerate the continuation of this profanation, of this desecration, and therefore He's acting now. He's acting in a way that is quite dangerous and scary. You walk in the streets of Israel, even though in Israel, so far we have about 500 people who are sick with this sickness, with this calamity. But so far no one has died, thank God. But the rest of the world is suffering also very much. When thousands of people in China, Italy, Iran, everywhere, thousands and thousands of people are dying from this terrible malady. And we hope that God is going to stop it soon. I hope so. Some people say it's only the beginning, but let's hope for the best. In the meantime, the cure for it is Shmirat Shabbat, the observance of Shabbat. Because the observance of Shabbat is causing the Jewish people to be united on Shabbat, and that's already the beginning of the redemption. Now, we know that Shabbat, since the Parashat of Vayakhel, when Moshe congregated the Jewish people, the first thing he told them is, Sheshet Yamim Te'aseh Melacha. You are allowed to work for 6 days, not the 7th day which we call Shabbat. Shabbat Kodesh Yelachem. It has this day of Shabbat should be holy before you. לא תבערו אש בכל מושבותיכם ביום השבת. You are not allowed to start any fire on Shabbat in all your dwellings in Shabbat. Question is, number one, why in the beginning of this parasha the law of Shabbat is appearing again? We already learned about Shabbat and the laws of Shabbat several times before. The Jewish people received the laws of Shabbat even before they received the Torah in Marah, that place in the wilderness. And then at the mountain of Sinai, one of the 10 commandments is Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho. Remember Shabbat to sanctify it. In the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, in Parashat Va'et Hanan, we read Shamor et Yom HaShabbat lekadesho. Observe Shabbat to sanctify it. In Parashat Mishpatim, we have also the repetition of keeping Shabbat. In the last Parashat Kitisa, again we see V'shameru b'nei Israel et Shabbat, that people of Israel are under the obligation to keep the day of Shabbat. So why is it in this Parasha Vayakhel, in which it's going to talk, Vayakhel and Pekudei, both of them are going to deal especially about the work of the Mishkan, all the things of the tabernacle that was to be constructed and upon which God will establish His divine presence in the hearts of the Jewish people, and so forth. But in the very beginning, the law of Shabbat appears again, as Moshe, after uniting and congregating the Jewish people, is telling them about Shabbat. Why? Another question. Okay, if you are talking about Shabbat, why specifically that one of the 39 works that are forbidden on Shabbat, that we learn from the 39 kinds of work that they did in the time of in the building of the tabernacle, which tells us also what we are not allowed to do on Shabbat. And among those 39 labors that are forbidden on Shabbat, here Moshe is choosing one of them, that is Lo teva'aru esh bechol moshbotechem. Do not light fire in all your dwellings. Why? Well, we can say several things. Number one, the law of Shabbat appears, as I said, because after the sin of the Egel, then God says, I will forgive them if they keep Shabbat. Our sages said, if one keeps Shabbat, it says in the Gemara, in the Talmud, in Masechet Shabbat on page 118, Kolam shamer Shabbat kihilchato, afilu oved avodah zara kedor enosh mochalim lo. If one keeps Shabbat properly and meticulously, God will forgive him even if he worships idols like in the generations of Enosh. That was a generation, the very beginning of time, when they used to worship idol worshipping, not because they forsook the existence of God, but it was a way that they are praying to the servants of God, like the sun and all the elements of the world. So little by little they forgot about God, but that's not that they renounced to agree that God exists or so forth. That's what we call apikoros. No, that was not the case. It was avodah zarah, idol worshipping, knowing that there is a master above all elements of the world. So if one keeps Shabbat properly and meticulously, even if he worships idols like the people of Enosh, God will forgive him. Of course, if one is an apikoros, for example, he denies the existence of God completely, then that's one of the things that practically will take away from him the right to enter the world to come, as the Talmud says in Masechet Sanhedrin. So that's why Shabbat comes here after the story of the sin of the golden calf. But we did ask a question: why necessarily the law of fire, of lighting a fire on Shabbat? Shabbat, of course, is punished. If one desecrates Shabbat, it's punishable by death. Today, after the destruction of the temple, we don't deal with the deaths of anybody about this. But that does not mean that it does not exist. Still, the 4 kinds of deaths that used to be administered by the judges of Israel in the time of Bet HaMikdash, they still exist in different forms, of course. The 4 deaths are, you have, number 1, you have Serefa, burning. The second death is Sekila, stoning. The third death is Hereg, killing by the sword. And then the 4th death is Henek, that means strangulation. So they still exist. If a person, for example, dies with a car accident, it's considered like if he died by the sword. Or burning is obvious. And the drowning, for example, in the sea, it's like strangulation. And stoning, if a house fell on him, or dilapidation of some kind. And all this is in existence, of course. So people should not think that there is no more punishment. There is punishment, only in a concealed way, because the way has the modernization of the world cannot allow things that used to be clear in the time of Bet HaMikdash, and no more today. So again, why the law of Shabbat? In the laws of Shabbat, why Moses chose the law of do not light fires in the dwellings of Israel? So, number 1, the answer number 1 is because there is a verse in the book of Jeremiah in chapter 17 and verse 27 where it says, Ve'im lo tishme'u elai, and God says, if you do not obey me, lekadesh et yom HaShabbat, to sanctify the day of Shabbat, vehitzati esh bish'areha, I shall put fire on the gates of your land, of your Yerushalayim, which will consume even the palaces of Yerushalayim, that will not end, that will not be extinguished. From this we understand that because of the desecration of Shabbat, simply talking, it's possible that fire could erupt somewhere and destroys. But it means also another thing. It means that that Shabbat, that means destruction. Burning is a kind of destruction. So God could send all kinds of destruction in the world, which are symbolized by the word Tav'ira, do not burn places, do not light fires in your dwellings, which means destructive manner. It could be also corona, the kind of destruction that could happen because of the desecration of Shabbat. But according to the Zohar, the holy Zohar, it means also lo teva'aru esh, do not light fires in your dwellings. That means you should not bring yourself into anger on Shabbat. That doesn't mean that you are allowed to be angry in any other Shabbat. And our sages were clear that one who is breaking things or tearing things because he is angry is considered like if he worships idols, avodah zarah. But here it means that do not bring yourself into any kind of anger on Shabbat. Any day is not advisable, of course. One should prevent himself from anger. But on Shabbat, twice as much, one should be careful not to bring anger into his house, to be nice with his wife, to be happy with the family and everyone, and definitely to avoid any kind of fights on Shabbat, because Shabbat requires only peace. That's why we call it Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat of peace, so that only peace will reign on Shabbat, and especially happiness and joy, singing and enjoying yourself on Shabbat. Because enjoying oneself on Shabbat is what we call the source of the blessing that there is on Shabbat. Let me explain that point. We, as you know, all the Jewish people, Sephardim and Ashkenazim, they sing the famous song of Shlomo Alkabetz, Rabbi Shlomo Alkabetz, that we call Lecha Dodi. And there it says, Ki hi mekor haberacha. Shabbat is the source of the blessing. There is a question here, because the Torah says, Uberachecha bechol asher ta'aseh, and God will bless you in everything that you do. Which means if there is a blessing, you have to do something. You do. You don't stay without doing anything and waiting for a blessing. Oh no. The blessing comes after you do something. The problem is that on Shabbat we are not allowed to do any work or anything. So upon what is going to be the blessing? And now you call the Shabbat the source of the blessing. Especially that the Holy Zohar says that because of the day of Shabbat, miyomad shabbata mitparnesin kol yomad shatta, that the parnasa, the blessing of livelihood and that comes upon you is because of Shabbat. In all the days of the week and all the days of the year are blessed because of the blessing of Shabbat. So now the question is, what do we do on Shabbat? We cannot do anything that is forbidden, right? You cannot do any work. So from where, how come we call it the source of the blessing? The answer is one of the great sages, of the last sages said, that based on what is written in the Tosfot in Masechet Baba Kamma on page 33, I hope I'm not wrong, and there in second page there, and there it says that the hana'a achsheveh ma'aseh, that the enjoyment that you enjoy Shabbat is considered like if you did something. That's the action of Shabbat, is to enjoy. So therefore, the Shabbat, since we are told to enjoy Shabbat by eating and drinking and singing and being happy and not bringing any anger or anything, this will be considered an action, and this action becomes the source of the blessing upon every day of the week and every day of the year. So you understand, when a Jew does not keep Shabbat, what he loses? Number one, he loses a tremendous enjoyment. Second, he loses the blessing that could come upon him. Number three, if he does not keep Shabbat, by what is he going to be recognized as a Jew? A Jew must keep Shabbat. For that, there is absolutely no excuse. Shabbat must be kept. This is one day of the week that belongs to God Himself. And if you are a Jew, that means you belong to a nation that was chosen by the Almighty God, you must observe Shabbat. It is time now, we live now in these days in which they are very dangerous days. It's possible that this is the beginning of some kind of redemption. We hope it's going to bring the Mashiach, like many people think so. Yes, why not? It's possible. But at the same time, if we don't keep Shabbat, we can expect only things to be harder and harder. Because apparently God now is acting. He cannot wait any longer. Jews, if they are Jews, they must start changing their habits, changing their ways, and let them begin with the observance of Shabbat as much as they can. And only this way we can expect the blessing of God in every sense of the word. That's as far as the Parashat of Vayakhel. Parashat Pekudei, it says, Elle Pekudei HaMishkan. This is the accounting of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, that Moshe brought before the people of Israel. Which means there was a lot of money, a lot of gold and silver that was gathered for the purpose to build up and to furnish that tabernacle, which was supposed to be the house of God, right? So apparently Moshe brought all the accounts to present them for the people to check. Why? The question is why? We don't believe in Moshe? Moshe was known by God himself. Bechol beti ne'eman, that Moshe is known as the most faithful, the most loyal man that existed. In the house of God he is known as the faithful man. And we don't believe him? Oh no, the answer is, of course everybody believed in Moshe. And I am sure they told him, Moshe, you don't have to present the accounts, we believe you. But Moshe himself is interested that you should check anything, everything. I don't want anybody to believe in me. You check. And the sages of the Halakha, as brought in the Beit Chadash, the Bah, in Yorede'ah, and there it says that even though Gabba'et Tzedakah, the people who gather the money to distribute to the poor, even though they are faithful enough, and we don't have to push them to present all the accounts, we believe them. Nevertheless, the Gabba'im themselves, those who collect the monies, they should come and present all the different things that they have to prevent, so that there should be no suspicion at all about them. One should stay away from any kind of suspicion and to be as honest as possible, because God appreciates honesty, and especially that when people make sure that others also believe in them. As our sages said, if you know that people love you and respect you, then God also will love you and respect you. It all depends on the people. Therefore, one has to be very careful to be always as honest as possible, honest all the way, and especially in the eyes of people, you should appear always as honest without any suspicion. So, there is much more to say about all this, but we don't want to make things longer and longer. We have said enough, and may God bless you all, my friends. May we have this Shabbat, a Shabbat in which finally suffering will come to an end. Maybe we should pray more and more. The Jewish people have the responsibility to pray not only for themselves, but for the rest of the world, so that this pestilence that has come in the form of this corona should come to an end. Many people are suffering today. Many people are sick. In Israel only we have 500 people who are sick. Let's hope they will be, Be'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God, they will come out healthy and happy. And let's hope that Hashem will be compassionate for us and for the rest of the world, that He should stop, and at the same time He should help us to contend with our evil inclination, so that we can start changing our ways, changing some of our nature from bad to good. God bless you, my friends, and Shabbat Shalom.